Alhamdulillah. Alhamdulillah Rabbil Alameen. Wassalatu wassalam ala khatim al-anbiya ashraf al-mursaleen wa ala alihi wa ashabihi ajma'in amma ba'd. In the time before the seerah really begins, yani before the birth of Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wasallam, in those things that are muta'alliq, that are related to the Prophet sallallahu alayhi wasallam, we were talking about at-Tubba' and his dream where he had seen that somebody from Habasha, from Abyssinia, would come and conquer their land. And under the leadership of Iryat and Abraha and Najashi, that dream had come true. And we spoke about how Abraha killed Iryat and how Najashi became upset and Al-Qulais was built to try to please Najashi and so on. And with the disrespect of the Qulais that was built by the Arab tribes, Abraha had now taken upon a task with the blessings of Najashi, the emperor of Abyssinia, to attack Al-Kaaba, Baytullah al-Haram. We know this, and as Muslims, usually we know this. Alhamdulillah, we read Surah Fil and so on. But there are many things that we miss, and many things that are very important to understand. And that's why we're going to go through this today, inshaAllah. Before I discuss the incident, I'm going to summarize between what the different kutub have mentioned. But I do want to mention, first and foremost, that this part of history is established by the Quran itself. Because if you read Surah Fil, you will find what happened with the Ashab al-Fil, yani the people that came with elephants. So there is no doubt as Muslims to the authenticity of what happened because it's in the Quran itself. Having said that, you also have many marfu' ahadith, yani where Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wasallam told us about aspects of what happened during this time. We have many mawquf ahadith, yani from the Sahaba radiyallahu anhum that explained, including some that we'll talk about inshallah, like for example Aisha radiyallahu anha that said she saw some of the people from that army, and then we'll talk about when that comes. And Asma radiallahu anha, who actually had a collection of that which was sent to destroy them. So we have many authentic narrations. But even if we look at Western historians, in their Orientalist mindsets, they also admit that there was a king named Abraha, and they talk about the names and Najashi and the time periods, and they match up as well. Regarding his attacking of the Kaaba, we'll talk about history from a Western perspective and obviously from an Islamic perspective about that as well. Abraha, as we know from the authentic historic documentation, he took 13 elephants, the strongest, the super tank, the super weapon, the secret, you could say of the time, being Mahmud, the very, very strong, big elephant that led the pack. On his way from Yemen. Now he's starting off from Yemen, but he doesn't know how to get to Mecca. And nowadays, when you go to Mecca, where do you go? You find the nice freeways, you see the big signs, see the big gates, you got GPSs, but they didn't have any of this. And this is all desert. So he didn't have. So what he did is he would start out and he would wait for the Arab tribes. And the Arab tribes, they realized that he was going to go destroy the Kaaba. And even though they were mushrikeen at the time, but from the time of Ibrahim alayhi salam and Ismail alayhi salam, they had ta'zeem, they had a respect and honor they used to give to Baytullah. So all the Arab tribes tried to stop Abraha. They tried to fight him. And as we know historically, none of them succeeded. Abraha defeated them one after the other. And he would take from them prisoners, and he would use those prisoners as guides to try to get to which way the Kaaba is, which is in Mecca. One of them that is mentioned in the Kutub of Tariq, like Ibn Kathir and Al-Dhahabi and others have mentioned, is Dhu Nafr. And he was from the Ashraf of Ahlul Yemen, from the people of Yemen, who was very honored. And him and his tribe, they fought and they were defeated, and he was taken as a prisoner. They continued to fight until they got to a tribe that they defeated with a man named Nufail ibn Habib. Nufail ibn Habib, and he is mentioned in many of the history books, authentic narrations, remember that name, and he will come up again. Nufail ibn Habib was taken as a prisoner. He was about to be executed. He told the king, what does it benefit you to execute me? So Abraha said, we will take you, but on the shart, on the condition that you show us the way. So Nufail, as a prisoner of war, showed them the way as well. Until they reached Ta'if, the city of Ta'if. And in Ta'if, the Thaqif Qabila, they came out, but they, instead of fighting Abraha, as the other Qabail, other tribes had done, they said, we are not here to fight you. Thaqif, they said, we will not fight you. Why? Because you're going to destroy Al-Kaaba, Baytullah, that's okay. Just don't mess with our Baba or our Pir, our Lat, our saint, our idol. Just don't mess with Lat. Now Abraha, he had nothing to do with Lat. He wanted to destroy the Kaaba so the people would stop making Hajj to Mecca and they would come to Yemen. So he told them, you keep your idol, no problem. And this is very interesting. Abraha here is at this time claims to be following the religion of Isa ibn Maryam. Right? Even though we know the Christians at this time had already corrupted the religion. But he's not worried about them being idol worshippers. He's not worried about them making shirk. He's not worried about them being another religion. All he's worried about is his political goal. Right? The Muslim, we worry about Tawheed. We worry about the fact that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is the only one that has the haqq to be worshipped. We worry about eradicating, I mean Muslims, not everybody with the title, but a Muslim, right? We want shirk to finish in the world. Right? But many Muslims, because the weakness of Iman, they're not worried about shirk anymore. They see shirk, they're like, so what's wrong with that? It's okay. They see somebody, he's gay, so what? He's this, so what? What does that bother me? Where's my political alliance? No. This is not the way of the Muslim. The way of the Muslim is not worried about political alliances. We are worried about establishing the haqq of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala on the ard. So here we see Abraha, he tells him, keep your idol, no problem. But now he's at Ta'if, he says, I need to get to Mecca. The Thaqif Qabila, they gave him a guide. And the one who came out, according to Ibn Ishaq and Ibn Hisham and all of them, is Mas'ud. He was one of the Thaqafi, one of the leaders of the Thaqif tribe. And subhanallah, if you know Mustalah al-Hadith and Ilm al-Rijal, you will know that Urwa ibn Mas'ud al-Thaqafi is a great Sahabi. So this Mas'ud al-Thaqafi, the one who went and betrayed Mecca, betrayed Baytullah, subhanallah, his son later will become a great companion of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. But Mas'ud ibn Mu'tib al-Thaqafi, he said, we will give you Abu Rughal. Some of the Kutub of Tariq have him with Abu Righal. But khair, Abu Rughal was a famous trader amongst the Arab. Even there's a hadith of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam from the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam in Sunan Abi Dawud, where he said they should be rajam, like the people should stone, like the stoning the Arab do to the grave of Abu Rughal. And where does that come from? A tradition developed where he died, that the Arab, when they would go by, they would throw stones and rocks at his grave to show their disrespect towards him because he betrayed the Arab and betrayed the Baytullah. And this is something interesting to remember in history. One of the great kings and conquerors of the Muslims, much later on, you have Ahmed Shah Abdali and you have Mahmud al-Ghaznavi and these people who conquered India. And when they conquered India, they took a lot of gold and statues and things, and every time they were offered to sell them. The Hindus would say, sell them to us. And alhamdulillah, they didn't. They broke them, but they didn't sell them. Because they said, we don't want to be remembered in history as the sellers of idols. We want to be remembered as those that broke the idols. Abu Rughal at that time must have thought that I have honored myself. Like I'm not going to be killed, I'm not going to be captured. I am the guide to the greatest army the Arabian Peninsula has ever seen. Elephants behind him, Abraha behind him, 60,000 force behind him. He must have thought that, but subhanallah, when you sell out, when you betray, what happens in the end? You become disgraced. You think, I'm going to go and help out with translations or whatever, I'm going to be a hero, but what's going to happen later is how will you be remembered in history when Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala brings the nusrah for the believers. So here, even though the people of Mecca are mushrikeen at this time, but Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala doesn't need anybody. See, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is not in need of anybody. Abu Rughal, he was the guide, he continued to guide Abraha to Mecca, and we find him in Sahih Ahadith being mentioned, as I mentioned, from Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wasallam. He got to an area called Al-Mughammas, which is in current day Mina. And when you go for Mina, Al-Mughammas is actually there. And this is where he died, and this is where his grave was made, and the Arab would then go and stone his grave. But now Mina, you're very close to Mecca, so they knew how to get to Mecca from there. Here now, Abraha, standing with his force, he sends out a message to the people of Mecca. Do you want to fight? Or do you want to surrender? Because I'm going to destroy Baytullah. I'm going to destroy the Kaaba. At this time, the people of Mecca obviously are no match. And remember, they are mushrikeen. They are not mu'mineen at this time. They're not believers. So there is no like jihad fi sabilillah or something. No. And they're people of shirk. So they decide we're not going to fight. And here, he says to send for them their leader to come speak to him. Now, the Quraysh had no king. The Arabs were not in the system of a kingdom. They had chieftains, they had tribal elders, and the most respected of them was Abdul Muttalib. Abdul Muttalib, as we know from the lineage of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, knowing back he was the grandfather of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. But what is correct is that he was not a Muslim. Here he is a mushrik. But even being a mushrik, he realized certain very important lessons that we as Muslims may have forgotten today. Abdul Muttalib, he wanted to then go and meet with Abraha, but it was very difficult because Abraha was not like sitting around where you can just walk up to him. He had a throne and he had guards and guards for his guards and their guards and their guards. So you couldn't just walk up. So he went and he spoke to Dhu Nafar. Dhu Nafar, we talked about him earlier, who was a prisoner, an Arab prisoner with the army of Abraha. Dhu Nafar told him that I am a prisoner, I can't get you to him either. But there is a man named Unais. Unais here was one of the Arab that was with Abraha's army. He told him, Unais, he has the ear of Abraha, we can get you to Abraha through Unais. Unais, Dhu Nafar and Abdul Muttalib then found their way and were allowed to go see Abraha. Abraha used to have, even though he was traveling, but out of his kibr, out of his pride, he would set up a huge throne and nobody was allowed to sit at the same level as him. If you came to see him, he would have a carpet put and you would sit down on the floor, on the carpet, and he would be sitting on his throne. And the Arab, their style at the time was to sit on the ground anyway. This was their way. So when Abdul Muttalib came, as we find from the Sahih authentic narrations, Abraha, when he saw him, he became impressed. He had a ru'b, a feeling came over him. Sometimes when you see somebody dignified, that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has given a ru'b, in Arabic we say that there's a presence, as we say in English. Right? So when he came, he was a handsome man, he was a well-built man, he was somebody who carried himself with honor. So when he came, Abraha saw this man and he felt as if he should honor him somehow. So he thought, I will have him sit next to me on the throne. But then he realized he couldn't do that, because if he had this Arab sit next to him, then the people of Habasha that were with him would say, why is he showing so much respect to this common Arab chieftain? It would kind of throw off his political balance. So he couldn't allow that. And at the same time, he felt this need to try to honor him. So what he did is he himself got down and sat on the floor, on the carpet, next to Abdul Muttalib. When he sat with Abdul Muttalib, he told him, through a translator, obviously he didn't speak Arabic, he told him, what can I do for you? I'm going to destroy the Kaaba, for sure. I'm here to destroy it. But what can I do for you? Abdul Muttalib told him, your armies have captured 200 of my camel. 200 of my camel. They belong to me. and I'm asking you to release them. They're my property. So he became upset. Abraha here became upset. He said, when I saw you, I was impressed. I had this, feeling that you were somebody of honor and respect, and I got down from my throne and sat next to you. But now I think you're a fool. Like I lost all that respect. I'm about to destroy Baytullah. I'm about to destroy your Kaaba. I'm about to destroy your holiest site. And you're worried about your camels? Abdul Muttalib told him, Ana Rabb al-Ibil. Yani I am the Rabb, I am the Lord of the Ibil. And lil Bayt Rabban. And the Bayt has a Rabb. In some of the narrations, it mentions Sahib al-Ibil and so on. But the meaning here is the same, which is that I am the Lord of the camels. Protecting them is my responsibility. This Baytullah has a Rabb. And that Rabb will protect it. Right? Subhanallah, now he is a mushrik here. And he doesn't know the Quran has not been revealed. He's not upon the religion of Isa ibn Maryam and so on. But even then he realized that Allah will protect what he deems to be holy. Okay? Today we get worried. If we don't sell out, if we don't do this, if we don't do that, then Muslims will finish and Islam will finish and they'll destroy this. And no. We as Muslims have responsibilities. We need to fulfill our responsibility. We need to speak the truth. We need, with hikmah, obviously, but we need to work towards what is righteousness, what Allah has ordained upon us, and never worry that Islam will finish, or the Kaaba will finish, or Mecca will finish, or Salah will finish. No, Allah will protect it. This mushrik understood this when we have forgotten this lesson. Abdul Muttalib, here, his words had an effect on Abraha. Ibn Sa'd and others, they record that Abraha here wanted to go back. He became afraid. Those words resonated with him. So he told his generals and stuff, he said, you know what, we've come all this way, we've made all these victories, let's just go back now. His generals were like, what? And then we made all these sacrifices, months and months of travel, and fought all these Arab tribes and all this. We told them we're going to destroy. When you go back to Najashi, what are you going to say? Right? So Abraha's like, all right, well, forget it then. I guess we got to do this, right? So he decides to give Abdul Muttalib his 200 camels back. And from the effects of his words. Now, the Arab tribes here, as Ibn Kathir and others have mentioned, that they offered some of the tribes 1/3 of their wealth and gold and all of that to Abraha. But Abraha was rich. And he had Yemen, he had Najashi and his kingdom in Abyssinia was rich at the time. The Arabs couldn't offer him anything. He refused all of that. He said, there is nothing that will take me back except to destroy the Kaaba brick by brick till it's gone. So, with his kibr, he started to move forward. Abdul Muttalib, at this time, he went to Mecca and he ordered the people of Mecca to leave. He said, look, if they're going to come here, we know that Allah will protect Al-Bayt. But I don't want that the army disrespects the women or kills people or massacres or does something like this. So all of the women and children and people leave. And some of the narrations, even though they are not with sanad, we don't have chains of narrations here, but they mention that they tied some animals by the Kaaba, hoping that the army will steal these, and because they were dedicated to the Kaaba, that the army would be destroyed. This is how much they had a yaqeen that Allah will protect that which has been given for the sake of Allah. Here, at this time, the attack began. Right? Some of the ulama of Tariq said that Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam was born on that day, Yawm al-Fil. Across the board, the ulama of Tariq said the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam was born that year, Am al-Fil, this year. That across the board you will find that they will agree. But what day exactly, we don't know. What I found to be most correct amongst the writings of the ulama of Tariq, and this is not dalilan, this is not something where we have a hadith from Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam on, is that Rasulullah sallallahu was born about 50 days after that day. This is what we find the majority and the strongest opinion amongst the ulama of Tariq. But what's interesting is we don't know, because it didn't matter. Was it the 12th of Rabiul Awwal or 10th of Rabiul Awwal? Was it in Rabiul Awwal? Was it here? Was it there? Was it the Yawm al-Fil? Didn't really matter. These things didn't matter to the Arab and they didn't matter to the Muslims. And that's why even if you go on throughout the time of the Salaf, most of them we only know their death dates. We know when they died. Most of them we don't know when they were born. Because the idea of a birthday or the idea of Mawlid or all these things were not known to the Muslims in the early generations. This was not something nobody even was concerned about. And that is why even when we look at the age of Aisha radiallahu anha or when certain Sahaba were born and so on, many of them were really not sure about the exact dates because the Arab did not have a calendar first and foremost, right? Secondly, they weren't really concerned about it. It didn't really matter to them. Right? So here, what was important now is that the battle began. Abraha ordered the strongest of his weapons. He wanted a shock and awe. He wanted the strongest force to go forward, and he ordered his soldiers to have Mahmud, the tank, the super weapon, to move forward first. Subhanallah, across the board in the Kutub of Tariq, we find that Mahmud would not move towards the Kaaba. Every time they pushed him, he sat down. They'd face him towards Sham, he would get up and walk with firm strength. They would face him towards Yemen, he would run. They would face him back towards Al-Kaaba, he would sit down. They realized this is not something ordinary. Mahmud and all these elephants were trained weapons of war. And these were used, they continuously used him in the battles against the Arab tribes, before that in Habasha and so on. So it's not like he wasn't trained or there was some kind of, it's not like he had a, some of the people, subhanAllah, they have a hard time accepting mu'jizat and karamat, so they always want to give some kind of scientific explanation. No, it's a miracle from Allah. It's not like his leg was broken. When he got up towards Sham, he was perfectly fine. Got up towards Yemen, he was fine. But when he was faced towards the Kaaba, he would sit down. They would hit him with sticks that had hooked ends. Even small axes. They had small axes. They would hit him, even as the Kutub of Tariq mentioned, they hit him on the head and the face. And the elephant would become enraged and attack at these kinds of things. But he would sit down. SubhanAllah, seeing this chaos now, Nufayl ibn Habib. We mentioned Nufayl ibn Habib. He was their only guide left. Right? So Abu Rughal had already died. Right? Now Nufayl ibn Habib, he was a prisoner, but he kind of got away. And he went to Mahmud and he told him, Ubruk, stay, Mahmud, or irji' rashidan. Either stay where you're at or go back to where min jayta, from the where you came. فإنك, for verily you are في بلد الله الحرام, in the holy land of Allah. Now again, subhanallah, Nufayl ibn Habib is a mushrik here as well. But they realized the sanctity of Mecca. Right? They realized the sanctity of the Haram and you have the Kaaba. So here he's telling Mahmud, now Mahmud is an elephant, he can't listen to you. He doesn't know English, doesn't know Arabic, doesn't speak human, but Nufayl was making a point. And Mahmud, by the will of Allah, he did not move. As I was writing this and looking up Ibn Hisham, Ibn Kathir and all of these sources, I started to think, subhanallah, these people should have seen this as a sign. And you should see this as a sign. And they should have taken ibrah, they should have taken a lesson from it. But they didn't. Instead, they used their infantry, their soldiers and their army. Now as I said, ulama of tariq have had minimum said they had 60,000 soldiers with them. Many ulama said 70,000, but even if you take 60,000, there's an empty city in front of you. So it's not like a big deal to go and defeat it. So even without the elephant, they started to move forward. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala then, He tells us in the Quran, أَلَمْ تَرَ كَيْفَ فَعَلَ رَبُّكَ بِأَصْحَابِ الْفِيلِ. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala revealed these ayats at a time where the Ashab al-Fil had all died out. According to ulama of Tariq, none of them were alive when these ayat were revealed. Even though this is early Meccan surah, but The people were not there. But Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala tells, Alam tara, didn't you see? And that tells you a very important lesson. Many times we want a sign. Like when we do da'wah, some people come to us and they say, show us a sign. If there is a God, tell them write God across the sky. Tell them a voice should come out of the ground and tell me there is one Allah, and then I'll believe. First thing, Allah is not in need of you to believe. It's not Greek gods or something where they need your worship. Allah does not need any of us. If all of us made kufr, and the worst kufr, altogether it would not take away from anything from the treasures and greatness of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. It is us who are in need of Allah. And here Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has shown that when clear signs were given. You look at other miracles that have happened with Isa ibn Maryam, with Musa, with Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, with splitting of moons and waters coming out from the grounds and all of this. Even then there were people that didn't believe. So that's just an excuse. Here Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is telling them, weren't you the people of Mecca? Didn't you remember that event that happened? He's bringing their attention to it. Even though Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala knows they didn't see it. This is a style of teaching. Right? Sometimes in durus, I will ask a question that I know the student doesn't know the answer to. But there is a point to grab their attention, so when you give them the answer, it will sit in their memory, in their brain. So here Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala tells the people of Mecca and to us as well in the Quran, didn't you see how Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala dealt with the people of field? أَلَمْ يَجْعَلْ كَيْدَهُمْ فِي تَضْلِيلٍ وَأَرْسَلَ عَلَيْهِمْ طَيْرًا أَبَابِيلٍ. What does Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, didn't Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala destroy their plan? And how did He destroy their plot, their plan? He sent upon them ababil. Tayran, these are birds. Ababil, and I'm not going to go deep into the tafsir here, but what we do know authentically from Ibn Abbas radiyallahu anhuma and Dahak, the tabi'i, ababil يعني يتبع بعدها بعدا, يعني they were sent in groups after groups. Hasan al-Basri and Qatada said al-kathira, يعني ababil means that they were tayran, they were birds, but there were many. If we look at the different narrations, we find that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala sent droves of birds, flocks and flocks, from the side of the ocean, from the water side. Many different descriptions have been given. I'm not going to go deep into that, but what we do know that there were birds, and each one had 3 small rocks. But these were not regular rocks. We'll talk about this when we get there. So here, you have no Muslims. You have no mujahideen. You have no people to stand and defend Baytullah. But does that mean that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is in need of them? No. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala brought His armies that only Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala knows who they are. Here now, flocks of birds came, and they came with little rocks. If we look at the narrations about أرسل عليهم طيرا أبابيل ترميهم بحجارة من سجيل. طيب, hijara or rocks. But what is min sijil? Here we look at the tafsir here, like a Tabari, Ibn Kathir, all of them mention that the Sahaba radiyallahu anhum said that they had 3 rocks, one in their beak and one in each of their claws. Sijil, as has been mentioned by Ibn Abbas and others, that this was a baked rock. Very interesting narration that I found that Imam al-Suyuti has mentioned from Kurz al-Khuza'iyya. She's also called al-Ka'biyya. And she said, I saw these and they were like the Yemeni pearls, right? And this is Juz' Dhafar, which are, and if I looked them up, they are these black and white types of rocks. But another narration also mentioned that they were rocks with clay baked. Here Ibn Kathir and Tabari and others have mentioned that they were baked in the nar of Jahannam. Tabari has mentioned narrations that each person that is hit had their name on it, and these are the same type that were the ones used for the destruction of Qawm Lut. Now, subhanallah, each one that fell, when it hit somebody, as the ulama of tafsir and tariq from authentic narrations from Sahaba radiallahu anhum mention, it would enter one, if it entered the top, it would come out the bottom, destroying the person through. Such a destruction as Tabari in his tariq says that there was nothing left of them to bury. They were destroyed in such a way, like as we see in the Quran, you will mention فَجَعَلَهُمْ كَعَسْفٍ مَأْكُولٍ, like the straw or hay that has been chewed up by an animal. If you ever been to like a farm and you see like a cow or cattle or buffalo, and you give them the hay to eat, once they've chewed and bits have dropped, it's nothing, it's scattered like dust. That's why Ibn Abbas in one of the narrations said kateen, like they were like dirt. Subhanallah, think about this. This is before chemical warfare. This is before the development of guns and bombs and all these types of things. Even when we look in the things that insan invents, they always copy the creation of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. I was recently on a plane, right? And the wings of the plane, they're a little bit flexible. So when you're flying, they bend. So my daughter was sitting next to me. So she was like, Daji, the plane's going to fall. Look, the wings bending. I tell her, no, it's supposed to do that, right? And I realized, because they take the design from birds and how the wings of birds are and the bone marrow and how they're hollowed for flight. And you realize that insan, what do? We just look at the creation of Allah and try to copy it. Even if you look at like using planes and bombing cities and all of that, this has happened centuries before planes were even invented. And look at how the power of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is. If you take a rock, even if you take it really high and you drop it, from its impact, it's not going to make somebody into mush hay. But this is the power of Allah. What type of creation of Allah was used for that baking, and how those rocks were made and how Allah sent them? Subhanallah. They would go through elephants and make them into nothing. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala sent this as a warning, as a sign. But how many people still didn't take heed? How many people today don't take heed of this? How many people sitting with their Ayatul Shaitan or Hizbul Shaitan or all of them are sitting there talking about, we're going to attack the Kaaba and we're going to take the Kaaba? Didn't you read the Quran? Come on. Right? Take a lesson. Kurz al-Khuza'iyya, she says, I saw these myself. In an authentic narration, Asma radiallahu anha also had a collection of them. She had collected some of them later on, because Asma radiallahu anha, she was older than Aisha radiallahu anha. So at a time she was able to get some of them, she had collected them, and the Sahaba saw them and they narrated these. Aisha radiallahu anha says that I saw some of in one of the narrations she said, I saw 2 from the army of Ashab al-Fil. Now that's interesting, because we know when the Quran was revealed they were finished. So she had to have been at an age where she recognized them. Khair, she said, I saw them and they were disfigured, blinded, unable to speak, begging. Here At-Tabari says that some of them were killed on impact. And some of them, as soon as the rocks would hit, it would come from one end, come out the other, they would be destroyed, wouldn't even be enough of them left to bury. But some of them, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala allowed them to live, even though they were disfigured and every one of them was hit. But allowed them to live to be a sign for mankind to remember. Aisha radiallahu anha, she saw some of these people, and she described them and described their hideous appearance after having been attacked. Now, at that time, when these rocks are falling and people are watching elephants disintegrate, there was chaos. And they started, because the army that came from Habasha originally, and then from Yemen, they didn't know the Arabian Peninsula obviously. So they had come here with the help of Arab guides, sellouts. So here, now they were calling out to them. And the one we mentioned, Nufail ibn Habib, so they started saying, Ya Nufail, oh Nufail, like guide us, get us out of here. And Nufail, he said in a beautiful poem, he said, Ain al-maghfir wa ilah al-talib. And where are you going to go when Allah, the creator, when God himself is the one looking after, who's after you. And then he said, Wal-ashram maghloob ghayra ghalib. And he made it rhyme. Right? He said, Al-ashram, now he is defeated and he was not victorious. So he said this beautiful poem to say, where are you going to run to? When Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has written something for you, where are you going to run to? You can change countries, you can change passwords, you can change names, you can hide, you can go get witness protection, you can get whatever you want. If Allah has written something for you, where are you going to run to? What castle is going to protect you? What land are you going to go to? Where can Malak al-Maut not go? You can put yourself on the bottom floor of the Pentagon and lock yourself in. Malak al-Maut will still find you there. Here, the main mutakabbir, prideful king, one who was going to destroy Baytullah, Abraha. Al-Tabari, Ibn Kathir, all of them, even Ibn Hajar, he discusses this in Fath al-Bari, says when he was hit in such a way, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala made it in such a way that he didn't die right away. That would be too easy of a death for him. He was hit in a way that caused his body parts to start falling off. And because the kafir always loves life, so he wanted to say, if he didn't say, I should make tawbah, or, what have I done? No, he said, take me back to Sana'a. Take me back to Yemen, to my home base, and then I'm going to be fine. So his soldiers and whoever who were also injured, they started to take him back. But this was a sign from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Ibn Kathir Bidayah wa Nihaya, he says that this was the hikmah of Allah, to show all of those Arab tribes that were defeated by Abraha that look, you couldn't stand up to him, but Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala destroyed him. So now he's going back, tracing his footsteps. Every Arab tribe that was defeated by his army sees this thing. When he gets back to Sana'a, they said he looked like a newborn chick. When a baby hen chick, a little chick is born, it's got featherless, it's real weird looking. It's just like a deformed little something. Abraha, strong king, he looked like that. Nose had fallen off, fingers had arms, things had fallen off. He just looked like a lump. But he made it all the way back to Sana'a and died there, as a lesson for everybody on the way. Subhanallah. When we talk about this, we as Muslims, no doubt we believe in this. Why? One, first and foremost, it's in the Quran. Secondly, it's in Sahih Ahadith. Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam has told us, Sahaba radiyallahu anhum authentically have told us, or the ulama of Tariq have checked and reported this. But what's interesting to me is a lot of Orientalists, you know what Orientalist is? And it's not a racist word here. An Orientalist is a kafir who studies Islam to try to cause issues. And some of the, mashallah, ai have taken them as shuyukh now, interestingly. When you study with a sheikh, with a alim, with a zahid, with a person of knowledge, it increases your yaqeen. What does it bring? Ithbat, itqan. What does it do? What does it do? Like 100 people here, nobody speaks. What does it do? It strengthens your deen. You become sure. When you study with a kafir, what does it do? It brings shak and shubuhat. And then you wonder why Yale brought you shak and shubuhat. Right? When Sheikh Goldstein and is your professor, then that's what happens. So many Orientalists, they would kind of put doubt on this. I was reading some of their works, and they said, we know Abraha existed, no doubt. All historians, kafir, Yahudi, mulhid, atheist, whatever, they all agreed that he was person. They have paintings, they have coins with his face and all that. Okay. They know that Najashi at the time sent him and he conquered Yemen and all of those names, everything in accordance with the Quran, Hadith, yes. But they were like this, attack on Mecca and this failed attack, we don't find in those writings. Okay? We as Muslims have no doubt in the Quran. But interestingly, some of the Orientalists, they had found writings that they hid in France for years. But they have been published now. In 2009, they've been published. Where they published in Paris some of the writings of the people of Abraha in their native language. And they showed the references to this attack and this failed attack and his defeat. And those writings would say that it was written as a miraculous defeat. It wasn't a military defeat. And that was the end of him. And Scott Fitzgerald, Johnson, Francis Peters, and others from Orientalists today have agreed that there was such an attack and there was such a loss. And the writings that I found manuscripts also scanned for is the Himyaritic inscriptions published by the University of Paris in French. And it's called Iwan Gajda, might be mispronouncing that, but it was published in 2009. Pages 142 to 146, as have been translated, confirm that Christian Julian Robin and Dan Gibson, that translated that, have confirmed that he did attack the Arabian Peninsula. And he was defeated in a miraculous defeat. Subhanallah. Yani this is a miracle of the Quran that even the kuffar have now had to accept. What more signs do people need? Khair, we know the story up to here and most people end it. Abraha was defeated, khalas. No, but there is more to it. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, he defended his land. Abraha, when he went back, he died. Abraha had a son, Yaksam, who became, and he was born from a Yemeni mother. She was a noble woman that he had by force taken, and through force had children with her. Yaksam was his son who became the king after Abraha. At this time, there was a man, an Arab, and again not a Muslim, but an Arab from the land of Yemen, and his name was Saif Dhul Yazin. Dhi Yazin, Ibn Dhi Yazin. Saif Ibn Dhi Yazin. And he was a brave man, an intelligent man, and he saw that these people from Habasha had conquered their land and had violated their women, they had raped and plundered and taken their wealth and enslaved their men. And he had a ghira, he had this sense that this is wrong. And this is the people of ghira, people that don't have ghira, then they don't care who rules over them. They just want to make their money, they just want to submit and be safe and be safe, quote unquote, and they don't care. But the people of ghira, they don't allow it. And amongst the Muslims as well, when we see the kafir enter the lands, the people of ghira, they will not stand for it. And they will continue to strive and struggle until they're free. Here Saif the Yazin, he stood up to try to take on Yaksam, but obviously he didn't have the manpower, he didn't have the ability to fight. So he went to the king of the Romans, Qaisar, and he asked for help. But Qaisar was in cahoots, was in line with Najashi, and Yaksam, under the protection of Najashi, had the same coalition, so they didn't help him. So he decided to go to the opposite side. He went to Kisra. Kisra was the emperor, and that's a title, it's not a person, it's a title for the emperors of Persia. So now the Romans and Persians were enemies. And because the Najashi was aligned with the Romans, so Saif here thought that if I can get the Persians on my side, they will give me some soldiers and I can then fight the army of Abraha, even though Abraha is dead here. Now, at this time, Yaksam died. Masruq, his other brother, became the king. So, Masruq was now the king. Saif was going around trying to get help. To get to Qaisar, or Kisra, was not easy. You can't just walk up to a Persian king and be like, hey, help me out, right? That's not the way it works. Subhanallah, Ibn Kathir and other A'imma and Ulama have mentioned a very interesting, most people don't think about this, but it's very important. How did the Persian kings deal with the people. They weren't people that would walk around and talk to the people like Umar radiallahu anhu, subhanallah. He would sleep in the streets of Medina. Sword is hanging, no guards, no barriers, no crowns, no special, ripped clothes. Gets tired, goes to sleep on the ground. Safe. Why? Because Allah protects him. He had no fear. But these kings, they were dhullam, they were oppressors, so they were always scared. They didn't enjoy life. Right? So he wouldn't come out. Once a year, he would show himself from behind a hijab. It's a little feminine, whatever, right? So he had a curtain, and hijab doesn't mean like a cloth on your head, by the way, right? He had a curtain that concealed him. And what he would do is a curtain, once a year he would have a day that the curtain would drop and he would be shown to the people, and the people would all fall in sujood. They would make sujood. It was their pir, right? So they would make sajda to him. So, and time to do that, they would put his crown on his head. But out of his kibr, he didn't just have like a little crown, right? He had a huge crown. The ulama of tariq have calculated it out, and I translating their weight system from that time onwards to one of my shuyukh who calculated out to be 90 kilograms, which is about 198.4 pounds. So his crown weighed about 200 pounds. As you can imagine, you cannot just pick that up and put it on your head like my crown here, right? They would have to have a chain that would lift it up. And then he would just sit underneath it and they would lower it, and he would be far away from the people, that it would give the illusion that this 200-pound jewel entrusted crown is sitting on his head. Of course, I'm sure they could see the chain, but nobody's going to say anything, right? It's a king with no clothes on kind of a thing, right? So he would sit and this crown would be lowered to his head, and then he would wave at the people and they would make sujood, and that would be his once a year appearance behind guards and all that kind of thing. And then those that were wuzara, those that were close to him would then come and ask questions. The regular people would not be able to even get close to him. Now here, when they went, and this day happened, and the hijab fell, and the crown was lowered onto his head, everybody, including Nu'man. Nu'man was the Arab that was exiled. If you remember Nu'man from the earlier durus, he was exiled out of Yemen, and he is the one that got Saif to this place. Saif didn't know how to get there, but Nu'man had lived under the Persian, so he took him. And he, even though he was a mushrik, he didn't worship, and he worshipped idols, he didn't worship the king, but mushrik doesn't care, they'll celebrate anything. Hanukkah, Halloween, doesn't care, they're a mushrik, right? The Muslim has to care. So here, he also made sujood to the king, even though he didn't worship him, but he doesn't care, doesn't have tawheed. Saif didn't. Now Saif is also a mushrik, but he didn't make sujood. So the king, he's looking and everybody's making sujood to him and he thinks he's all happy, and he sees one guy not doing it. So he gets upset. What's wrong with this guy? Bring him here. But subhanAllah worked out in Saif's favor, right? So they brought him to the king. Now the king here, the Persian king, he told them, what's wrong with you? And everybody's making sujood. Why aren't you making sujood? Saif, he didn't say I believe in tawheed. As I said, he's not a Muslim. He said, I was too concerned with my worries, I even forgot where I was. And I was so worried. He said, what can be that troubling that in front of all these people making sujood, you forgot to make sajda to me? He says, because my land of Yemen has been taken by these people from Habasha, and they have raped women and killed, and they've taken the wealth of my land and sent it to Habasha and this on, and I'm so worried about my people and my land that I lost my mind. I didn't even know where I was. So the king here became impressed. This guy was really worried. They go, so what do you need? He said, oh, king of Persia, these are your enemies. They are aligned with the Romans. Give me your army. I will go and fight with them. And Saif, he was known to be a brave man. So he said, I will fight, but I need more soldiers with me to fight an army of that size. The king here now collected his wuzara, his advisors. Right? And he told them, okay, what should we do? Should we attack? It might be good for us to attack our enemy. They said, why are we going to get involved in? They're Arab. They were nothing to begin with. And it's between them and whoever they have to deal with. Why would we send our armies and put them in danger and get them killed? Let them rot. So the king comes back to Saif and he tells him that I will give you 10,000 wealth, yani whatever was the currency of the Persians. Some of the ulama wrote dinar and dirham because this would not be an Arab currency, it would be in the Persian currency, but it was a lot of money. I will give you 10,000 gold coins, let's say, and you go and do what you can, but I can't endanger my army. Saif, he took that money and he gave it out to the people. 10,000 gold coins, he just started giving it out. Now, the king gets this news, oh great king, you gave him this generous, large amount of money, and he just gave it away. King's like, what the hell? What's wrong with this guy? Bring him. Brought him back. He's like, what's wrong with you? I gave you 10,000, you just gave it away to people? He said, you're worried about 10,000. I'm worried about my land of Yemen where our mountains are made of gold and silver. Now, obviously the mountains weren't made of gold and silver, but and there was mubalagha there. He was trying to exaggerate, but he meant that the land of Yemen is rich and fertile and has many precious gems and things, and 10,000 is nothing. Now the king realized something here. He said, this guy is not after money. You know, those that are abdul dinar and abdul dirham and those that are just out to make money, you will never win. Even if you want to go fight jihad, but you're doing it to get paid, you're not going to win. You want to give da'wah because you want to make money, you're not going to be successful. You want to start a YouTube channel, but your point is to make money, you're not going to be successful. Why? Because success comes with ikhlas. So success comes with sincerity. Even if you're not doing it mukhlisan lillah, and if you're doing it mukhlisan for whatever your niyyah may be. If your niyyah is for your qawm, for your people, and you're sincere, you're not worried about filling your own pockets, then Allah will give you that, but then you have nothing in the akhirah. But if your niyyah is for Allah, Allah will bring you the wealth. Allah will bring you the honor, Allah will bring you the glory, but Allah will save the best, the reward for the akhirah as well. So those that do it for money, you will see, somebody will go and put a lot of money in, and governments will give you money and you will take that money, but you will never find success. Here, when the king realized that Saif was not in it for money, he went back to his wuzara again. He said, look, we got to help this guy. And there must be great riches in Yemen. And he agreed. Obviously the Persians weren't in it for Allah's sake either. So he said, look, there is money in Yemen. And if the Romans are that interested, there must be some wealth there. So let's help him out. His advisor said, look, we have an army, we have battles back and forth with the Romans. We can't put them at risk. We need them here to protect our life. Again, worried about their lives. Right? But they made a really interesting plot, and that's something very interesting people don't know about, but ulama of tariq have recorded it authentically. They said, we will take all of our criminals from the jails, murderers, rapists, anarchists, those that try to topple the government, rebels. We'll take all of them, make a unit and give them to Saif to go fight with. It was like the Australia of the time. No offense to our brothers and sisters watching from Australia. Right? So they took all of the criminals and they made a battalion and they told Saif there is 800 of them. Take them and some weapons and some money and things like this. And they gave Wahriz was one of the Persian generals and he was brave and intelligent, well known. They gave one general and then the rest of these criminals and they sent him. And the reason they gave Wahriz was, as Ibn Kathir says, because the Persians would not allow a non-Persian to lead. Even in this situation, they said, we cannot let an Arab be a leader. So we will put one Persian just so that he can lead. So it can be under our banner. And they sent. Saif here collected the Arab tribes, numbering, as Tabari says, 7,500. And they went to battle Masruq. Masruq's army was much bigger. But after Abraha and what happened to him, and Masruq being a weaker king, they weren't very good at the battle. They met and they fought. And during the battle, Wahriz, he asked them, where is Masruq? Now Masruq was afraid of death, as every kafir is. Right? So what did he do? He would be on an elephant, but then he would change. Like he would keep changing positions, so the enemy doesn't know where they are. If he was always on one place, then the enemy would attack the king. So he would be on an elephant, then he would switch clothing, he would switch positions, he would get on a horse. Then he would get on a camel, he would be switching. Wahriz, he said, where is he? His spies told him he's on an elephant. He says, I can't touch him, leave him. He told him, where is he now? He's on a camel. He told him, okay, can't touch him. Where is he on a horse? Where is he? He was on a mule. He said, a mule is the son of a donkey. He actually said, Ibn Himar, right? That's what the mentioned Tariq. I'm not making that up, right? He said, it's on the son of a donkey. So you have a donkey on the son of a donkey, now I can attack him. So he attacked him and he killed him. Masruq was killed, and here the Abyssinian rule of Yemen ended with 4 kings that passed. Iryat being the first and original, but he was killed by Abraha being destroyed by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, Yaksam dying, and Masruq being killed by Wahriz and the Persian army. Here now, the Abyssinians were defeated, and the Persians, they took control of Yemen. Interestingly, Wahriz, when he was going to Sana'a, they had gates for the city. And the gates were big doors, so they would lock them. If you ever go to an old city, you will find gates, and they would be locked to stop the people. So when he was going, he saw the gate, but it was not high enough for his flag. His flag was very high. So instead of bending, this is how much kibr he had. Instead of bending the flag to go in, he had the gate destroyed so the flag goes straight in. And he started to rule there. When he died, his son took over, and his son and his son. 4 generations passed until the new king of Persia was displeased with their way of ruling. And he had them removed, and he had Bahzan radiallahu anhu, who will become a Sahabi later, become the king, the Persian ruler of Yemen. And this is the time that Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam was born. And we'll continue with that in the next dars, inshaAllah ta'ala.